I woke up on the day my father brought another girl into our home. But this time, I remembered everything. In my past life, I had died at my own father's hands. He threw me from the 99th floor of a building without a single moment of hesitation, as if I were nothing but a problem he needed to get rid of. I should have died completely. But something strange happened. My soul had stayed behind, invisible and unheard, floating beside him for weeks. I watched him walk through every room of our house. I listened to every phone call, every whispered plan, every lie told with a smile. And somewhere in that strange in-between state, a quiet power came to me. I could push my thoughts into the minds of the people I loved. Only them. Only my family. Not every moment, not from far away, but close enough, and when it mattered. It was the one gift death gave me before I was pulled back into the living world. Now I was alive again, standing in the hallway of our glass villa in Bristol City, watching my father bring home a girl named Mina Klein. She looked small and frightened. Her arms had old bruise marks and faint whip scars. She stood near the doorway with her head down, shaking slightly, like a wounded bird who had learned that the world was not safe. In my past life, my mother had looked at those marks and felt her heart break open. She had pulled Mina close, cried for her, and from that day on treated her like a real daughter. That kindness was the beginning of the end for all of us. My father, Darren Vale, stood beside Mina with a warm and practiced smile. He was tall, well-dressed, and had the kind of face that made strangers trust him immediately. He had spent years building that image, the loving husband, the devoted father, the successful businessman. In truth, he had married my mother only to climb higher. He had never loved her. He had loved another woman for years, a woman named Selena Hart, who was sharp, calculating, and patient. Together, they had planned everything carefully. Darren would marry into money, gain control of the company, and once he had what he needed, he would leave my mother with nothing. Mina was Selena's daughter. She had been brought into our home as the final piece of that plan. Mina, Darren said gently, go on. Call her mother. Mina looked up slowly. Her eyes were wet and trembling. She glanced at my mother the way a child looks at someone who might either slap her or hold her. My mother was Elaine Vale. She was a composed and elegant woman, someone who had always led with quiet strength. But she also carried a deep softness inside her, especially toward the suffering of children. Darren knew that. He had always used it. Elaine stepped forward and reached for Mina's hand. The moment she touched it, I pushed a thought into her mind. Not everything. Just one careful sentence. She is not who she appears to be. Look closely. Elaine froze. Her hand stayed on Mina's, but her eyes moved slowly around the room before settling on me. I held her gaze and kept my face perfectly still, like a child who had no idea what was happening. She blinked. Her brow tightened slightly. Mina, sensing the hesitation, began to cry. It started with a quiet tremble of the lip and quickly became loud, heaving sobs. She threw herself into Elaine's arms and buried her face against her shoulder. In my past life, Elaine had held her tightly and wept alongside her. This time, Elaine stood stiffly, her arms only loosely around the girl, her eyes distant and troubled. Adrian, Elaine said quietly, still holding Mina, was someone speaking just now? Was that your voice in my head? I shook my head. I could not explain the truth yet. If I told her I had been reborn, she would think I had lost my mind. Elaine studied me for a long moment, uncertain. Then she pulled back from Mina and straightened. Stop crying, she said, not unkindly but firmly. This is your home now. You are safe. Adrian, take her to her room. Darren corrected himself. Her room. I meant her room. I nodded and walked ahead. Mina followed quietly behind me. Halfway up the staircase, she fell. I knew she would. She rolled 2 steps down, landed hard at the bottom with a dramatic cry, and immediately looked up at me with wide, tearful eyes. Darren rushed from the living room. Mina. What happened? Don't blame Adrian, she said through her crying. I slipped. It was my own fault. Darren's expression darkened. He looked at me as though I were already guilty. She is your sister now, Adrian. How could you treat her this way? Have we raised you with no heart at all? Elaine came forward more slowly. I saw her watching Mina closely, not with the softness of before but with the careful attention of someone who has just been told to look. Mina turned to Elaine with a soft and sorrowful voice. Please don't blame Adrian. I know he isn't ready. I understand completely. That was her best weapon. Making herself the forgiving one, the understanding one, while quietly poisoning how others saw me. I had no time to speak before I pushed another thought to my mother. She tripped herself. Watch her feet when she stands. Elaine's jaw tightened. She looked at Mina's feet, then at her face. Mina, she said, voice low and even, I saw clearly what happened. Pitiful does not mean innocent. I hope you remember that. Mina blinked. Something shifted behind her eyes, surprise breaking through the performance for just a second before she caught herself. Darren started to object. Elaine ignored him and walked away, and I followed her. That was the beginning. In the days that followed, Elaine began to drift. Not in weakness, but in awareness. She stopped laughing at Darren's jokes. She started going to the company offices in Larkford earlier and staying later. She read through documents she had never examined before. She sat with accountants who had always reported to Darren, asking quiet questions and taking careful notes. Darren had been building influence in the company for years. He had cultivated allies, guided decisions, and slowly positioned himself as the one truly running things, while Elaine held the title. When she began walking through those same halls with open eyes, his allies grew uncertain. One by one, they stepped back from him. He came home one evening rigid with anger. She's changed, he muttered on the phone, pacing the study. He thought no one could hear him. She was supposed to stay manageable. What happened? Selena's voice was tight on the other end. You still have the sons. Focus there. Win them first. My older brother Caleb came home first. He had been injured 4 years earlier, a hit-and-run that left him unable to walk without pain. He used a wheelchair most of the time now. Doctors had told him the damage was beyond repair. He had accepted that sentence quietly, carrying a deep shame about his body that he never spoke aloud. What he did not know was that Darren had arranged the accident. He had wanted Caleb out of the way, too proud and capable to be easily controlled. The foreign specialist Darren hired had told Caleb there was no hope, but that doctor had been paid to say exactly that. Mina was waiting at the door when Caleb's car arrived. Big brother, she said brightly. I've waited so long to meet you properly. You're even more handsome in person. Caleb looked uncomfortable but managed a polite nod. She walked beside him and said, You must be exhausted. Let me help. I took a massage class specifically for improving circulation in injured legs. Can I? He hesitated. All right. She stood behind him and began, while Darren watched from the doorway with quiet satisfaction. His plan was working exactly as intended, the soft approach first, affection first, and then later the leverage. But then I stood close enough to Caleb to project clearly. He ordered your accident, I thought. The crash was not random. And every doctor who told you there was no hope was selected by him to keep you in that chair. Caleb's whole body went rigid. His hands gripped the wheels of his chair hard enough to turn his knuckles pale. The warmth drained from his face. Mina felt the tension and asked, Did I press too hard, big brother? He pulled away before she finished speaking and shoved her hands back firmly. Enough. What? I said enough. Darren stepped in. Caleb, that was uncalled for. She was only trying. Leave it, Caleb said, and wheeled himself down the hall. That evening, behind his closed bedroom door, Caleb sat alone. I heard him make a phone call quietly. He had tracked down a specialist in Germany, one completely outside Darren's connections, and made an appointment to have his legs examined for the first time by someone who owed his father nothing. He did not say a word to anyone. He just began. Noah arrived 2 days later, dragging a duffel bag and already reaching for his phone. He was 21 years old and had the body and habits of someone who had been told all his life that he deserved comfort without effort. He was overweight, unmotivated, and spent most of his days eating junk food and playing video games. In everyone's eyes, he was harmless, a spoiled youngest son who would one day coast into some easy role in the family company and never really amount to anything. That was exactly what Darren had designed. Noah did not know that his father regularly made sure the kitchen was stocked with the worst food imaginable specifically for him. He did not know that every time he was offered chips and soda and fried chicken, it was a quiet investment in his future uselessness. A son who ate his way into illness and spent his days in front of a screen was no threat to anyone's inheritance. In my past life, Noah developed esophageal cancer at 28. By the time it was diagnosed, it had already spread. He died slowly and terribly. On the night he passed, Darren hosted a dinner party. Mina had filled Noah's room with his favorites this time too. Bags of chips, 2 liters of soda, instant noodles, chocolate bars, and 3 new video game releases still in their packaging. Noah dumped his bag, saw the spread, and grinned. I crossed the hall and stood in his doorway. Everything in that room is a trap, I thought. He keeps you fed on sugar and fat so you stay slow and sick and easy to manage. He doesn't want you to be capable. A capable second son threatens his plan. Noah stopped smiling. He picked up a bag of chips and turned it over in his hands, studying it like he had never seen it before. I continued, you won a mathematics Olympiad when you were 12. You were sharper than anyone in your class. He saw that and he started this before you even knew what was happening. Noah set the chips down very carefully on the desk. Then, without a word, he picked up every single bag, every box, every bottle, and dropped them out of the window onto the grass below. He deleted his gaming account, which had taken 3 years and a significant amount of money to build. He picked up the newest game console, still wrapped in plastic, and put it directly into the trash. Then he sat on the floor with his back against the bed for a long while, staring at the ceiling. Adrian, he said finally, even though I had not spoken out loud. How long have I been wasting myself? He did not wait for an answer. The next morning, he was in the home gym at 5:30. By the end of the week, he had called tutors for every subject and told them to start from the beginning. He studied until midnight and was up again before sunrise. He stopped asking anyone for food and started cooking plain, simple meals for himself, the kind of food that actually gave energy rather than taking it. He lost 3 kilograms in the first 2 weeks alone. Meanwhile, Elaine stood over her bathroom vanity one morning and noticed a long strand of hair caught in the teeth of Mina's brush, which had been left by mistake on the shelf. She did not say anything. She pulled the strand free and placed it carefully into a small sealed plastic bag, then slipped it into her coat pocket. I let that moment happen silently. She knew exactly what to do with it. She had already started to suspect that Darren's devotion to this girl ran deeper than simple adoption. She needed to understand why. She sent the sample to a private laboratory in Larkford under a false name and told them she needed a full genetic profile within the week. Caleb received his German specialist's evaluation 3 weeks later. The report stated clearly that the injury, while serious, had been treated in a way that guaranteed it would never heal. With the correct surgery and proper rehabilitation, there was a strong probability he would walk again. He read the report 3 times in silence before folding it and placing it in his jacket pocket. That same evening, he began physiotherapy on his own, starting with the exercises the German doctor had outlined. It hurt. He did not stop. Every morning he pushed himself 1 degree further than the day before, gripping the parallel bars until his arms trembled, teaching his legs slowly and painfully to remember what they were supposed to do. Noah was transforming alongside him. Weeks of discipline showed in his posture, in the sharpness of his eyes, in the way he carried himself. The softness in his face was being replaced by something focused and deliberate. He started sitting in on company calls with Elaine, learning the business from the ground up, asking clear and intelligent questions. Elaine herself had now restructured 3 departments entirely. 2 of Darren's closest internal allies had been quietly removed under perfectly legitimate reasons. The board had started calling her directly. Darren had become a man who held a title and an office but increasingly little else. He came home more often. He cooked meals. He spoke softly and smiled carefully. He was performing the role of the reformed husband, the devoted father, the man who had simply made mistakes and was trying to be better. None of us were fooled. The birthday party was Darren's last big move. He spent 2 weeks arranging it. Flowers were ordered from overseas and filled every corner of the front garden. The villa was decorated in soft pink and ivory, lit from every angle with warm light. The invitation list included 43 business associates, 12 family relatives, and every neighbor in Bristol who was worth impressing. The purpose was not to celebrate Mina. The purpose was to install her publicly, to place her in front of witnesses as a recognized member of the Vale family, and to use that stage to pressure Caleb into transferring a portion of his inheritance shares to her. On the evening of the party, Elaine developed a sudden headache and retired upstairs. Noah announced he had a training session he could not reschedule. Caleb came, not because he was fooled, but because he understood that some battles were better fought in the open. Darren led Mina through the crowd on his arm. "Friends and family," he said with a warm, carrying voice, "this is my daughter, Mina. She has not had an easy life, but she is mine, and she is home." Guests applauded. Mina smiled beautifully at the right moments and played the gracious, grateful daughter without a single false note. Then she found me standing near the dessert table with a small plate of cake. She approached with a glass of champagne and a smile that was slightly too sweet. "Do you like my dress, Adrian? Caleb had it made for me in Milan. He said it cost 6 figures. It suits you," I said. "Jealous?" She tilted her head. "Before I came, he only bought things for you." I said nothing and took a bite of cake. She waited for a reaction. I did not give her one. Her smile stayed, but something behind her eyes shifted. Uncertainty. She was used to people responding. Anger, denial, hurt, even silence that looked like suppressed pain. What she was not used to was someone who genuinely did not feel the hook. Caleb wheeled toward us from across the room. Mina's eyes flicked to him. A quick idea moved across her face. She stepped slightly back, caught the edge of her long hem under her heel, and threw herself forward with full force. The dress tore along the back with a sound that cut through the nearby conversations. The skirt panel fell away completely. She landed on the floor dramatically, hands covering herself, face flushed with what she performed as genuine shock and humiliation. "Adrian," she cried. "How could you do this in front of everyone?" Every head in the hall turned. Darren was at her side within seconds, pulling off his jacket and wrapping it around her. Then he turned to me with fire in his face. He raised his hand. I did not move. His hand stopped in the air. Around us, 40 guests were watching. Striking a child in front of them was not the behavior of the kind and grieving father he had always sold himself as. He lowered it slowly. "Adrian," he said through careful control, "it is her birthday. She has spent years without a real family. Can you not put aside whatever jealousy you feel for one single evening?" "I did not touch her," I said. "Do you believe me, or not?" He ignored that and turned to the crowd, painting the situation with practiced strokes of sympathy and gentle disappointment. Mina continued crying, now managing to both appear injured and quietly sympathetic toward me. "Don't blame Adrian. I'm an outsider here. I should have known better." Relatives began to pile on. "She needs real security in this family. Words are not enough. Give her shares. Make her a true member. Caleb, you're not working yet. Surely 10% transferred to your sister would settle things." Darren nodded with the right expression of reluctant wisdom. "Caleb, this is all I ask. For the peace of this family." Caleb raised his head slowly. His eyes were red. Not with tears. "Footage," he said. He had already called the house manager. The screen mounted at the far end of the hall lit up. From upstairs came my mother's voice, composed and final. "In this house, I make that call." She descended the staircase in a perfectly fitted dark suit, silver earrings, and the expression of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. Noah walked beside her. He had lost enough weight that several guests did not recognize him at first. He stood straight, arms at his sides, watching his father with eyes that had moved far past disappointment. The footage played. High resolution, completely clear. Every guest in the room watched Mina step deliberately on her own dress. They watched her calculate her fall. They watched the small, satisfied smile she allowed herself in the half-second before she hit the floor. The hall was absolutely silent for 3 seconds. Then it broke open. She did that herself. She framed her own brother. What kind of girl does that? Mina's image, the soft and suffering girl without a home to call her own, was gone. What replaced it was the truth, and it had been caught on camera in front of everyone who mattered. "Remove her," Elaine said. Mina clung to Darren. "Please. I won't do it again. Please." Darren stepped back from her. He played the betrayed father. Cleanly, without a stumble. "I took her in with a good heart. I did not raise her to do this. Adrian, I was wrong. I am sorry." He had pivoted so smoothly that anyone watching might have believed it. "If you want to apologize," I said, "give me something real." He exhaled. "What do you want?" "I want the shares in the family company that are in your name." The room went still again. Several guests exchanged glances. A whisper ran through the back of the crowd. He was ready to hand 10% to an outsider, but his own son needs to ask for it. Elaine stepped forward. "You told me years ago those shares were being held for the children. Return them to their rightful owner." He was trapped on every side. Refuse, and the image he had spent 15 years building would crack tonight in front of his most important connections. Accept, and he would walk out of this hall without the only real leverage he still had. He signed. The attorney Elaine had quietly placed in the room all evening stepped forward with the prepared transfer document. Darren's hand trembled as he wrote his name. When he looked up, his eyes held nothing left but hatred. It was gone from his expression within a second, but I saw it. I had always been able to see it. After the party, the house became quiet in a different way. Darren's anger did not explode. It went inward, which was worse. He became attentive. He woke early and cooked breakfast. He asked careful, gentle questions. He knocked before entering rooms. He repaired a broken garden gate without being asked. He was rebuilding trust so he could use it. One dinner, he served a dark chicken soup he had prepared himself. He ladled it out with a careful hand and said, "It is good for the joints. Caleb, especially for you. Elaine, you have been overworking yourself." No one touched their bowls. He wiped his hands on a cloth and added, "There is one more thing I should tell you all. My uncle back home is unwell. I should go visit him tomorrow. I will be back in 3 or 4 days." I pushed the thought to my family before he finished the sentence. He has no sick uncle. When he leaves, he is not going home. He will come back in the middle of the night with gasoline. Elaine set down her spoon. Caleb's hand tightened under the table. Noah looked at his bowl, then at his father, then at the floor. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Elaine nodded. "You should go. A son should be with his family when they are unwell. Don't worry about us here. We will lock up properly." "Of course," Darren said, smiling. "I will miss you all." He left the next morning, a single bag in hand, waving from the driveway. That night, Elaine took us to a hotel in Larkford. She booked 2 connecting rooms under a name that was not ours and said nothing about why, only that she needed everyone close. We stayed up until the news came at 4 in the morning. The Bristol City villa was on fire. At 3 a.m., Darren had come back. He wore a dark hoodie, a mask, and thin gloves. He carried 2 large containers of gasoline that he had purchased 2 towns over for cash. He moved carefully around the property, cutting through the garden from the side entrance, keeping to the spots where he believed the old cameras had blind spots. He did not know that 3 weeks earlier, after the birthday party, I had told Caleb where those blind spots were, and Caleb had quietly arranged for new cameras to be installed in every one of them. He poured the gasoline through the downstairs rooms, along the hallway, against the base of the staircase. Then he lit a match. He stood for a moment watching the flames rise. There was something on his face in those seconds, relief, finality, a kind of satisfaction that was terrible to see. He murmured something we would only see later on the footage. Then he walked quickly out of the garden and disappeared into the dark. By 5 in the morning, most of the building was gone. Darren returned at 9, dusty and wide-eyed, stepping out of a taxi on the road outside the ruined villa. Police tape was already up. Journalists had gathered. Neighbors stood in clusters, speaking quietly with their hands over their mouths. He ripped through the tape. He fell to his knees in front of the smoking rubble. The sounds he made were extraordinary, loud, ragged, full of a grief that looked completely real to everyone around him. "My family," he cried. "I was gone one day. One day. How could this happen? My children. My wife." People genuinely felt for him. Reporters captured it. Several neighbors wept. What a tragedy. He only just left yesterday. A whole family. Then someone tapped him on the shoulder. He turned. We were standing 5 feet behind him, holding coffee cups from the hotel downstairs. Elaine, Caleb in his chair, Noah, and me. Darren's expression did something I had no word for. It collapsed and rearranged at the same time, grief trying to find somewhere to go and finding nowhere. "You're alive," he said. It came out barely above a whisper. "We stayed in town last night," I said. He stood up slowly. Then I turned to the officer beside us and nodded. The hidden camera footage had already been sent to the police the previous hour. The gasoline purchase records. The car rental that showed him driving back into Bristol at 2 a.m. The footage of him entering and moving through the property. The officers moved in. Darren stumbled back. "This is a family matter. I am the head of this household. You cannot." The cuffs clicked. He started shouting. He threatened. He named lawyers and business contacts and board members. None of it helped. Just before they put him in the vehicle, I walked up close and said, "There is one more thing." He looked at me. "The DNA test came back," I said. "The one my mother ran on Mina's hair. Mina is not your biological daughter. Selena lied to you. She used you to build a better life for her child, and you burned your family down for a girl who was never yours." The noise left him completely. For the first time in as long as I could remember, Darren Vale had no expression at all. Just a blank, hollow face, standing in the ash of everything he had destroyed. Then the car door closed. In the weeks that followed, the truth spread far and fast. Selena Hart was located and interviewed by investigators. The full picture emerged: the arranged marriage for money, the affair running parallel to it, the plan to slowly transfer assets through Mina's adoption. The courts were not gentle. Caleb's German surgeon came to Bristol. The surgery was scheduled for late spring. The preliminary evaluation was better than expected. Noah passed his university entrance exams with a score that put him in the top 5% of his group. He called from the exam hall and said nothing except, "I told you." Then he hung up. Elaine stood at the window of her new apartment in Larkford, watching the city, and I stood beside her. She had never directly asked me about the thoughts she heard. She had simply used them, trusted them, moved when they came and held still when they did not. Now, in the quiet, she said, "You knew everything before it happened." I did not answer. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she reached out and put her hand over mine. "It does not matter how," she said. "You came back to us." Outside, the lights of the city were coming on one by one, filling the dark in every direction. We had lost the house. We had lost years to a man who had only ever seen us as leverage. But we were standing in the same room, unbroken. And that was everything.